Thanks for staying with us on SABC News. Now, the tax environment of small and medium businesses came under the spotlight this morning at the 2017 Tax Indaba, which is currently underway in Johannesburg. Delegates discussed how to bring informal traders and small businesses into the tax fold. They also discussed the extent to which small businesses contributed to the tax gap. Devan Murugan is at the Indaba. We join him now for that session. Good afternoon, Devan.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Zinga. Yes, indeed, the second day of the Tax Indaba 2017. And as you correctly say there, the intro, under the spotlight, small businesses and SMEs, small business and enterprises, and their contributions to this tax gap that we see. Now, if you've seen reports this morning, SARS executives are due to brief Parliament tomorrow about a 13 billion rand, the report says, deficit or shortfall in the first quarter of the financial year to end June. So that's a lot of money in terms of a shortfall. And of course, tax practitioners and executives here want to do everything possible to sort of fill in that gap. Well, let's get straight into talking to one person that was in that session from the South African Institute of Professional Accountants. Faith Ngwenya joins me. Faith, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. I mean, this issue of small businesses, I mean, government often tells us that this is where the engine lies for creating employment. So it's pretty important, I guess, to get this into the informal economy and start getting these enterprises to start paying tax. This was what the session was about this morning.
Yes, Devan, thank you for this. It's very important to understand that growth in South Africa will come mostly from the small business entities. It's actually both the formal and the informal sector that needs to be brought into the fold. The formal sector, if one looks at your registered businesses, we have quite a number of registered businesses in South Africa. But the problem is they are failing in their first few years. And what we were actually deliberating on is, can we look at means where we will be assisting businesses, the small businesses, to strive, not to really fail in their first 3 years. We need to be looking at how can we as government reduce the red tape? How can we as the profession assist in upskilling the small entrepreneurs and make sure that they actually understand the role that they can play in growing the economy of South Africa? Yes, there is this huge tax gap, and it really needs all hands on board.
Yeah. One of the other components to the discussion was whether or not small businesses are indeed compliant. Now, that's a multifaceted question because you can answer that in a number of ways. Are they?
What I can actually say is that most of them want to be compliant. Are they compliant? Not all of them are compliant. There are a number of reasons for non-compliance. In some cases, it's because they actually do not have the capacity to be tax compliant. They do not have the capacity to employ an accountant, to employ a tax practitioner, or rather to engage a tax practitioner that is going to assist them in getting their books in order and their tax affairs in order. And that is where we really are saying that we need to be looking at how can we assist our small businesses to really be compliant, know their worth. That really is important, that they need to understand how worthwhile they are to the economy of the country. Because sometimes, if you look at a very small micro entity, they do not see the bigger scheme of things. And if they do not see their importance, then obviously they are not going to really worry about tax and what it is that they are required to be doing. And so it really is a role that we, together with the government, needs to be playing in supporting this. And I must just say that with the introduction of the Small Business Development Unit, the ministry that was set up, one of its key role, it is ensuring that we are bringing small and medium-sized entities into the economy, into the spheres of the economy.
I want to switch onto the other side now. I mean, I had a conversation with the tax ombudsman, Bernard Ngwepe, the judge, yesterday, brought up a very interesting point. And this point came up last week when his report on delays in tax returns were released. And he actually spoke to me about the consequences of not paying taxes or tax returns in time to small businesses. He says devastating consequences. Before we get into that, let's just listen to that clip of Judge Ngwepe talking to me about the consequences of tax not being paid on time as far as returns are concerned.
In fact, we have had instances where businesses almost had to shut down, and some had to go and arrange some further overdrafts at a huge cost, simply because their cash was being withheld, and some had almost had to retrench their staff. Finally, the final point that I would like to make is that we appreciate in our report the challenges that SARS are faced with, such as fraud and the like. We have made allowance for that, but we still feel that the improvement is necessary. And the one point that was made by SARS was that, oh well, it's only 1% or so, which, in respect of which we could be a default in terms of paying too late. To me, that's not the point. That 1% constitutes a particular category of taxpayers. That is, the taxpayers whose refunds verification should be made manually. It's a total group of those people. Now, if that total group is 1%, but in all of them you fail to pay them in time, then you have failed 100% to pay the 1%, if you know what I mean. All those people in that category then don't get paid in time.
And there you go, Judge Ngwepe there speaking about the consequences of delayed payments to small businesses. I want to pick up from there, Faith. I mean, two concerns that surfaced in the session this morning, recurring concerns from small businesses. One is what the judge spoke about, just not receiving those tax return payments in time. The other is delays in actually getting paid for government services. This really had the light shone on it this morning, didn't it?
It did. If I just take on the delays from SARS in releasing the VAT refunds or any other refund that the business entities are awaiting, if you are looking at your small and your medium-sized entity, they may be looking at a refund of about 2 million rand. Now, remember that VAT, unlike your income tax, it's not paid annually. It's actually after for most entities, it will be after 2 months. So, and then you have acquired this huge machinery because you want to grow your business, and there are rebates that you obviously are entitled to from a VAT perspective. And then you have complied, you filled in your returns on time, your VAT 201 was submitted on time, and there is a refund that you are waiting and it's not forthcoming. What does that do to a small business? That is really what you need to run your business. That is what you need to have as cash flow for your business. And if it is not forthcoming, it does cripple the businesses. There are a number of businesses, especially last year. The 2015-2016 tax year was the worst year as far as refunds are concerned. We had a number of members and with their clients that were coming out of business because they just couldn't cope. They were waiting. They were owed millions. I'm not just talking small amounts here. It's millions that they were owed by SARS. So that has really had very bad effect on the businesses. But then on the other side, we then have where they have done business with the government. The small entities, it is a known fact that your big corporates are really not interested in doing business with government. So you have got a lot of those service providers to your government entities being your small and medium-sized entities. And again, their cash flow relies on how much is coming in on the work that they have done. So if you are looking at these businesses that are promised payment within 30 days, and the 30 days becomes a year, sometimes it becomes 3 years before a small entity can actually be paid. We have seen that the Department of Health was one of the departments. I know that they have actually worked very hard to make sure that their suppliers are now paid relatively on time. But we have seen quite a number of suppliers to the government entities and the government departments that have gone out of business because they are not paid on time.
I've got a few seconds here. I mean, this conference goes up until Friday. Remedies. Can remedies come out of a conference like this? And Is SARS receptive to some of the suggestions here? Very quickly.
We have a town hall discussion this afternoon, so where the members, the attendees will obviously be posing questions to SARS. So we are very hopeful that they are here in their numbers, and I must really commend them for taking up the challenge and coming to the conference to be part of the conference throughout the 5 days, because they are here to listen, and they have promised that as far as possible they will, where they can give the answers here and now, they will be giving the answers. Otherwise, they have promised us as the profession, as the recognized controlling bodies, that they will be taking it back and they will come up with remedies as soon as possible. So we really are holding them to that we will obviously, straight when we have our stakeholder meetings, be engaging them on the issues that are raised here, to say, what are we doing? We really need, we are all for tax compliance, and we really want everyone to be compliant.
We're going to have to leave it there. Faith Ngwenya from SAPA, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. And I suppose that's the important element here. You have the NDP plan calling for a chunk of the jobs being created to meet some of those targets coming from small businesses. So it's important to get those businesses up and running, not only on the activity level, but paying tax. We'll get back to this conference a little later for more analysis.